Welcome to Double Overtime presented by VC Ultimate. Cruising right along. Somehow it is already over halfway through April. We are into the college postseason. We are approaching somehow the closing weeks of the Western Ultimate League regular season. And we almost have every single team in the Premier Ultimate League having played their first game of the season. That'll happen this upcoming weekend, which will be very exciting. I'm Jenna Weiner here with Sasha Vogel. Sasha, conferences for you coming up this upcoming weekend. How are you feeling about it? How is your team feeling? You're in the Carolina Conference, which is loaded with teams, including the controversial bid owners that we talked about last time. How are you feeling? Excited for your team ahead of conferences?
Yeah, our main goal is to make it out of the conference.
It's a good place to start on your way to potentially stealing that bid from UNC Charlotte. Maybe.
Yeah, I feel like, honestly, making it out of the conferences is the main goal, because regionals is going to be tough no matter what happens. Even if we somehow win the conference, regionals is still going to be tough. It's just how it is.
That's true. And then so regionals, the thing going to be tough, and it's going to be tough for us, Sasha, because we have to go against Deep Look. Charlie and Keith have laid down the gauntlet. They would like to challenge us. This has historically been a thing with Sin the Fields, but Sin the Fields is no longer a thing. We are apparently the new people for them to go up against and challenge for college regionals picks. So we'll have to get our brains together ahead of, I think we're probably going to be recording next week, because then conferences will all be done ahead of regionals. The last weekend of April. So we'll have to figure out what the heck we're doing in terms of our choices, that we don't have to suffer whatever punishment may be dished out to the losing team. TBD on what that is, but it may be a bit tiresome, annoying, frustrating. No specific spoilers, but we'll see what ends up being the decision. But that'll come, so keep an ear out in the Deep Look podcast feed. We'll be on there next week doing regionals picks, but we're talking WLPL per usual here. But Sasha, maybe a little bit of a different format this week. We're going to try and mix it up, try and highlight a couple of games and do sort of quick hits for the rest of them. Hoping this will be a little bit more sustainable, especially as games continue to ramp up in number in the weeks to come. So, Sasha, should we dive in? I think you're first up if we start with the Western Ultimate League.
All right. Starting off with Western Ultimate League, we had at the beginning of our weekend, Arizona traveling down to San Diego.
Across. Certainly they traveled west. I'd have to look at a map. Are you pulling up a map?
I'm pulling up a map. Question. Honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know exactly where.
I mean, I should be the one
Arizona's home base is. But
where
is Arizona?
Phoenix.
Okay, Phoenix. So it's kind of across.
It's mostly west. San Diego slightly south of Phoenix, and LA slightly north of Phoenix. Arizona Sidewinder is doing the SoCal double, playing both San Diego Super Bloom and LA Astra. The thing is with statewide teams like Arizona, they have a chunk of their players from Flagstaff or Tucson, so they traveled west, and some of the team traveled more north, and some of the team traveled more south. Anyway, continue. Geography lesson over.
Wow. Yeah, I never. Anyways, continue.
This is classic West Coast geography versus East Coast geography, and the differences in the ways that people think about things. It always blows my mind when I'm like, oh yes, I have to travel at least 3 hours by car to leave my state from where I am. And then there are people in New England who are like, yeah, if I drive 30 minutes, then I already leave my state. And if I drive 2 hours, then I've gone through 4 states. And I'm just very confused as a Californian.
Yeah, California is a whole I because of the East Coast, I think everything's like a lot closer together, and California is not that way.
and
It's
that's
huge.
not even talking about Texas. We'll talk about Texas later when we get to the fuel stuff.
Okay.
Anyway.
Anyways, Arizona traveling over to San Diego, over and down a little bit to San Diego. And we all knew this was going to be a tough game for Arizona, especially on the road. And it was. I mean, San Diego won by, is that 8? 24 minus 6, 24 to 16.
8 goals.
That is 8 goals.
That is.
And I mean, it kind of just started in the first quarter. It was 4-8 at the end of the first quarter. And like from there, it was fairly comparable to like the same, almost the same amount of goals for each team. So, well, I guess until the fourth quarter as well. So yeah, it's like the middle of the game for Arizona was great for them. It was the beginning of the game and the end of the game that did not go so well for them.
I mean, yeah, if we're doing a little more quick hits on this game, and we'll do a sort of similar thing for the Oregon-Seattle game before going into some more depth on the Arizona-LA game, which more consequential. We'll get to that for the Southwest Conference standings. I think this is just, I was not surprised when this result came in because we have seen that San Diego is the class of the Southwest. In fact, San Diego, as of now, has clinched their spot at championship weekend. They will finish first at this point. They literally, like, the worst they can finish now is 6-2.
Which is great for them because they can buy tickets and it's going to be a lot cheaper than later on.
Yeah, it's true. So, San Diego, big win, not surprising. And we're recording this on Wednesday evening, the 19th. So we only have stats right now for the Western Ultimate League from the first 5 weeks of the season. But notably, as of the first 5 weeks, San Diego had the top 3 goal scorers in the league tied at 15 apiece, which is kind of incredible. Followed by 2 Alpenglow players with only 4 games played each. So not surprising that San Diego rolled against Arizona, and Arizona has bigger fish to fry. Again, we'll get there in a little bit.
Yeah, also notably for San Diego is that Kayla Helton is the only player in the league with over 1,000 receiving yards and 1,000 throwing yards at this moment, as of week 5. Not sure how that's going to change after this week, but yeah, as of week 5, only one in the 1,000 club for each.
And also only player who currently, as of, again, week 5 stats, who had a triple-double in terms of double digits goals, assists, and blocks, Dina Ali-Malik. Not amongst the top 3 players in goals scored, but like that is incredible contribution. San Diego is going to be a problem. And yes, they are going to not have championship weekend at home, but like they are looking good. And I would not be shocked if by the time we got to championship weekend, we got that Seattle-San Diego rematch. And I would not be shocked if Super Bloom took it down this time. They just look that good. But speaking of Seattle, they also won by a pretty big margin.
Yeah, they won by 7 against Oregon in Seattle. And again, it kind of started in the first quarter. Those first quarters are so important because like I feel like this happens a lot, I think, is that like one team gets super hot and one team is still kind of warming up, and then like the middle of the game they kind of go and do this back and forth thing. So like you got to start these games off really hot or it's not going to go well for you. Basically, is what I've been seeing the trend is. At the end of the first, Seattle was up 2-5 at halftime, up 4-9 at after the third quarter. They were up 8-13, and then they finished 21-14. Now that fourth quarter was a very high scoring quarter. I flipped through them through it pretty quickly, and I don't know, maybe it was just, people getting tired on defense because there wasn't a ton of defense. Like there was a lot of big unders, and maybe that was just how they were playing. Obviously I don't know what the coaches are saying to the players and how to play them, but from my perspective, that's what it looked like. Notably, Greta Eisenbray on Oregon Onyx, she tweeted that she was involved in over a third of Oregon's scores this weekend, which, doing the math, a third of 14 is 4.6 repeating. So I imagine it's probably 5 goals. I don't know.
5 or 6 or something
five or
like
six,
that.
five or six scores. 3 of those came in the fourth quarter, where she threw 3 hucks and all 3 were completed, 4 scores.
Yeah, Greta continues to be a powerhouse for Onyx. And they're just sort of like one of the linchpins for the Onyx backfield, able to get resets and able to power the disc downfield as well. So really, I mean, impressive performance from Tempest, all around contributions per usual. We'll see the stats tomorrow. But again, not particularly surprised. They're in the driver's seat for the Northwest Conference, and really the only reason they haven't clinched a spot in championship weekend is because the Northwest Conference has their games backloaded. All of the teams in the Northwest going to be playing each other in Colorado on the final weekend of the regular season. So Seattle may get a chance to clinch before them, depending on results. But also currently heading into Wild Wild Weekend, Utah has only played 2 games. So technically, Utah could finish 7-1, right, Sasha? It's possible?
It is possible.
So then that's, again, partially why Seattle hasn't quite clinched yet, while San Diego has. So, yeah, again, not too surprising in either of those results. And then it was a question, third game of the weekend, Arizona on the road to LA, and Sasha, in the way that we were talking about breaking down this week's show, we were like, hey, let's highlight 2 games and let's each sort of pick one to break down. And you ended up on the LA Arizona game. So talk us through it.
Well, first of all, this was an absolutely must-win game for Arizona, because I don't think that if they I think that if they lose this game, I don't know if there was a good chance of them being able to make championship weekend.
I think there might have been a chance, but it would have probably come down to tiebreakers.
Yeah,
which they would have been
like
in a losing
year.
Position to LA if they had lost this game. But they didn't. They won the game.
They won 16-10. It was an entertaining game to watch. Arizona looked great. LA at times looked great, and at times didn't look so great. It was for LA, it was a lot of miscommunication or execution errors resulting in turnovers, like throwing it behind somebody or throwing it to nobody, or just kind of throwing it into the ground, or things like that. And Arizona's D-line just took advantage of it, and they got a lot of breaks. Like, let's see how many I counted them. Let's see. Arizona got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 breaks. Yeah, 6 breaks to LA's 1 break. LA started the game off 2-0.
Wait. So you're telling me LA went up 2-0 to start the game with a break, and then didn't break again for the rest of the game?
And didn't break the rest of the game.
Oh my goodness. That is, I mean, good on Arizona, I guess, right? To just keep it pretty clean from there, or at least get the disc back when they did turn it over.
Yeah, their D-line offense was looking incredible, and their O-line was looking great too. Like Chip Chang and Paige Applegate just absolutely running the show for them. It was almost every other, and they would get open constantly. And it ended up where, like, Paige Applegate, 1 assist, 2 goals and a block, and the rest of the O-line just kind of like almost divvied up like who there wasn't any like standout stat performers, I would say. Nobody like stood out crazily on the stat sheet. It's like it was just an all-around great performance for this O-line, but this D-line, everybody was standing out on the stat sheet. On the D-line had Cody Lippincott with 1 goal, 2 assists, and 2 breaks. 2 blocks, apologies. Helen Eifert with 3 assists, 2 goals, and a block. Melissa Dunn with 3 blocks, a goal, and an assist. And like just a few others were doing just amazing things for this D-line. Like this D-line looked legit. And I think that's like what like really helped them win the games at the beginning of the season too, is that their D-line, like I think I mentioned in the show, was that their D-line offense looked better than most other D-line offenses in the league. If that makes any sense.
It does. I mean, and that was something that we did talk about week 1 was like, oh my gosh, like Arizona pulling these upsets. It was because they were generating break chance after break chance after break chance. And like, yes, they weren't converting on all of them, but I feel like the number was something like 20 or 25 break chances that Arizona generated in week 1 and 1 or both of their games. And yeah, if you do that and you take advantage and the other team, in this case, LA, isn't able to do the same, then you get a bigger margin for Arizona than what their wins were in week 1. And notably, it's a win away from home, Sasha. Arizona, outside of championship weekend, has won. This is somehow the Sidewinders' first regular season win outside of Arizona. Somehow.
Incredible.
Yeah, and it comes on their second to last game of the regular season this year.
They had to break the curse somehow.
This is a way to do it. 6-point win for LA. I think disappointed. This is now 2 16-10 losses at home. They lost, coincidentally, 16-10 to the San Francisco Falcons in week 1. Now I've lost 16-10 at home against Arizona. And I'm going to double check this real quick, but I'm pretty sure they have one more home game. Unfortunately, it's against San Diego. I would not be surprised if LA ends up going 0-3 at home this year, which is kind of surprising, I think, for an Astro team. Maggie O'Connor, per your notes, another good performance, although not the absurd stat line from the previous game against San Francisco. And Astra, it's tough.
She still had 5 assists and a goal. That's over half of the scores for the team.
Wild. 6 of 10. Goodness gracious.
60% of the goals. That's nuts.
Hey, world, Maggie O'Connor's pretty good. In case you didn't know. Yeah. Any other notes on the game? Yeah.
One matchup that I was paying attention to for most of the game was Cody Lippincott versus Jasmine Childress. Cody was on Jasmine for most of the game, and Jasmine was not able to do much at all. And the
pretty
goal
impressive.
Jasmine did score a goal like late in the third quarter, and Cody wasn't guarding her. Like Cody was put the locks down on her.
Yeah.
There was one goal in it was the very, very first Arizona break of the game. Was a insane layout D. Cody Lippincott got a layout D and then got the bookends immediately after.
Was that the layout goal that was doing the rounds on social media?
Yes, that was the one. With the
ginormous
incredible
celebration.
Yeah.
Appropriately.
That was incredible. That was Arizona's very first break of the game.
Wow.
And then they just went off from there.
Yeah, your comment about Lippincott doing well against Childress made me think of a stat I saw recently around NBA playoffs are also happening, and the Warriors are playing the Kings. So it's a very California NorCal situation. But I saw a stat in like one of the write-ups of the Warriors Kings games and said, I forget what Warriors player it was, but like shot this, percentage or went 0 for 5 against these defenders. And I think it'd be interesting, although tough, to do, to, eventually, right? Stats of like tracking how well does an individual player do in individual matchups against other individual players. And obviously it's like not every possession and there's like switches or zones, but like the same thing happens in basketball. So for me, I think there's the advanced stats future of Ultimate could be things like that of like, okay, Jasmine Childress, was marked by ABCD players throughout the game and performed.
How many receiving yards did they have?
How many receiving yards, how many goals scored, how many assists thrown, like those types of things I think could be really interesting in terms of like advanced stats down the line for Ultimate. But that's a ways off.
That is a ways off. Yes.
We are lucky enough if we get stats at all, we'll get to that. Cool. Anything else on the game? Otherwise, let's talk some Southwest Conference scenario stuff.
Southwest Conference scenario is you texted me this like 50-line thing about every scenario that could happen in the Southwest Conference right now. It's like if the Browns win this one game and this team loses by 14 and this other team wins by this much, then they have a 14.7% chance of making the playoffs or something weird, something like that.
Look, I have long been a big fan of advanced stats, and like, for example, 538, the website does a great job of like tracking percentages of like percent to win or percent to finish for like European soccer, like percent chance to finish to win or finish in the top 4 of the league. And that would be great if that happened in Ultimate. I was like, there's not that many games left in the Southwest Conference, because I can also, for this situation, San Diego's already clinched. I can ignore San Diego, and it's a matter of which of the other 3 teams is going to make it. And the interesting thing is that they're sitting at records of 3 and 4 for Arizona, and then 2 and 3 for both San Francisco and LA. And conveniently, not only do San Francisco and LA have the same record coming into this weekend, but they also are both playing at Wild Wild Weekend, and they're both going to play 2 games this upcoming weekend. So it was really, for me, straightforward to say, okay, if SF or LA goes 2-0, 1-1, or 0-2 at Wild Wild Weekend, what does that mean for the standings? The takeaway, I will sum up the paragraphs that I sent to Sasha, is that San Francisco is in the best spot, remarkably, which I know Arizona won already in week 1 and has that set up their out of conference wins, and SF and LA haven't played their out of conference games yet. But if San Francisco wins out, they win their next 3 games, they're in, period, done. And LA, notably, not in control of their own destiny. Even if LA wins out, if San Francisco also wins out, San Francisco is in. And then it's a matter of, okay, well, how does San Francisco do at Wild Wild Weekend? And even depending on sort of the situation, San Francisco can lose a game at Wild Wild Weekend and still advance to championship weekend if they beat Arizona, or if they don't lose to Arizona by too much. So San Francisco in pole position, but it's going to be really interesting to see how it shakes out. And Wild Wild Weekend is going to be huge because it will set up it'll basically pick the scenario of the 6 that I laid out for Sasha of what the records are coming into the weekend. That'll set up the final 2 games for the Southwest. It also may be LA may not have a chance by the final weekend, which would be unfortunate, but how it goes. Although they're playing San Diego, and I'm sorry, Astra fans, I'm not probably going to give your team that much of a chance against a team that beat you by 11 earlier this season, Sasha. So anyway, I'm excited. Southwest Conference homer over here. Also, I'm hopeful that it's going to set up for an interesting commentary for me to do when Arizona comes to town on the 29th. Anyway, it's my little jaunt for the Southwest standings. Anything else, Sasha, on your end for Western Ultimate League action? We'll talk Wild Weekend when we do picks.
Correct. No, I think it's time for a break.
Okay. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking PUL action week 3. Turns out DC Shadow is real good. More news at 11. We'll be right back. Our friends at VC Ultimate are proud to sponsor Double Overtime. VC proudly puts community over profit, focusing their support on initiatives that help promote inclusivity. As the first ever sponsor to back professional women's and non-binary Ultimate, VC puts its money where its mouth is when it comes to equitable action. VC also approaches product innovation intentionally to make more players feel like the Ultimate space is their own. Did you know that all VC core products are now 100% gender-free? If your team is in the market for uniforms or custom team gear, check out VCUltimate.com. Not only are they working to change the landscape of sport, VC's performance gear is the best on the field. Thanks to our sponsors of Double Overtime, VC Ultimate. And welcome back to Double Overtime presented by VC Ultimate. We're on to our Premier Ultimate League portion of the show. There are 3 games in the Western Ultimate League, 3 games in the Premier Ultimate League. Sasha, we nearly have every team having played a game, but some teams have played 2, and boy, it's looking pretty good for some of them. Not so great for others. We'll get to that. Again, we're going to do a bit of what we did for the Western Ultimate League, where we will quick hits couple of the games and then go in depth for one of the games. It'll be my turn this time. And we'll do some general takeaways and then we'll get to picks and that'll be the show. Sasha, we good to go?
We're good to go. Let's start.
Let's do
DC at Milwaukee.
This was not close. And that is an understatement.
Not at all. If you don't know the final score was 24-6.
Yikes. That's back-to-back 18-point wins for DC. Turns out DC's defense, we said it last week, I'm pretty sure, is very good. It continues to be very good. No real surprises here. Milwaukee, not the team that they were last year, and even then, that team didn't quite make it out to championship weekend. DC, the number 1 seed last year, with a fantastic defense, currently sitting pretty well poised after a couple of games. Again, great defense. They have a plus 36 differential after winning by 18 in back-to-back games. So, yeah. But, Sasha, we talked in the first bit about I gave you a whole big scenario with the Southwest Conference and the Western Ultimate League. Before that, you had sent me a, admittedly, much shorter scenario for the East Division because DC 2-0 has won 2 out-of-division games. But is there a world in which DC can miss out on championship weekend? You have an argument that that case is yes, it is possible, depending on situations and how everything plays out.
Yeah, I believe that it is possible. Like, because of what we still don't know 100% for sure if this is true but like we said, through the rumor mill that a committee will be choosing that last championship weekend team based on win-loss and strength of schedule, stuff like that. And we both believe that it like an Eastern Division team will be that last team going in, just based on how great this division is. And there is a scenario where DC could not be that team, but it involves a lot. It involves Philly winning every single one of their games except for one, Portland has to beat Philly at least once. Portland plays Philly twice this season.
Yeah, it's the only like double header basically, which is very strange, but that's how it goes.
But Portland has to win one of those games. The scenario can work out where you have like our circle of suck with DC, New York, and Portland.
A beats B, B beats C, C beats A.
Yeah. And we can have a scenario where the three teams, so if Philly were to win all their games except for one, you would have Philly at the top of the division, and then the three teams under them would all have the same record. And they would all have wins like against each other. And so then it just comes down to their out of division games. And since with the committee doing strength of schedule, DC has the weakest, in my opinion, like out of conference schedule. Like, yes, they play Raleigh, which if they beat Raleigh, then they have an argument to it.
Just what your scenario sort of lays out is that they would have to beat Raleigh. Here's the thing. I don't not hear it. I just think it is unlikely given the other situations and given that it feels unlikely at this point that East Division teams are going to lose out of division games. And so then you have to rely on their balance within the division, which we were looking at it before. And I think we were correct in noticing that New York, Portland, and DC all play Milwaukee out of division, which, boy, that is a tough
for Milwaukee.
Tough. Out of division to draw those three teams as their only out of division games. Oof. But like so then okay, you can take Milwaukee if all three of New York, Portland, and DC all play Milwaukee. You can take them out of the equation because it's all basically the same, assuming they all win by reasonable similar margins, whatever. And then you're starting to compare like pairs of teams. But even then, it gets problematic because Portland only has one other out of division game because they play Philly twice. Anyway, it's a mess. I hear you. It is possible, but I think it would require, I don't even know what it would require. Like DC getting blown out by the other East teams, except in the one win. Like they win close and then get blown out in their other two East Division games. Like that's basically the only situation where I see them like losing out in the committee setting, assuming they beat Raleigh. If they don't beat Raleigh, then all bets are off, depending on how the other division goes. But maybe that's your point, right? Here's the other thing, Sasha. The argument might be DC has a plus 36 point differential right now. They could, lose a couple of games in the division, which not great. That already puts them on the back foot. They lose to Raleigh, all of a sudden they have a worse record. And so then, yeah, it is possible that a team that starts out 2-0 with a plus 36 point differential could get left out if the back half of their season doesn't go well. The problem is it doesn't seem like the back half of their season is going to go poorly at this rate. But again, they've only played 2 out of conference games or out of division games. Gosh, switching back and forth between those two is going to be a pain. So I just think I hear the point. I think it's going to be difficult. DC looks really good. They showed it against Milwaukee. Again, when's the next time they're going to be in action? I have, luckily for myself, compiled a document for us that has all of the WMPO games in front of us in like one calendar. Next time DC plays is at Portland on May 6-7 weekend. So that's pretty big. And they followed up with hosting Philly, and then they play at New York. So May is going to be the time for DC because they get back-to-back-to-back East Division games. So we'll see. Maybe you'll be right, Sasha.
It's possible. That's all I'm saying.
Possible. Another game that was a cross-divisional matchup. Nashville playing at Columbus. Sasha, we'll get to our picks, but this is the one game that we actually picked differently. I said Nashville, but Columbus I picked Columbus if Cat McGuire plays, and Nashville if Cat McGuire doesn't play, and then you just picked Nashville. We're going to give you the credit. We'll get there. But Kat McGuire did not play. And it turns out Rachel Kramer and Jesse Schaffner are really, really good and very hard to stop. And Nashville ends up taking it down by a couple of goals over Columbus. Columbus falling to 0-2 on the season. Columbus early lead 4-3 after the first quarter, and then Nashville 11-10 at halftime, 16-14 after 3 quarters, 20-18. So pretty close and balanced throughout, but good on Nashville to pick up a win on the road. The tough sledding in the South Division, though, for Nashville.
Yeah, real quick about this game. Not about the game itself, but the production, the broadcast, the live stream.
Mm-hmm.
Columbus people, if you are listening, please have someone put the score on the screen. The quality excuse me, the quality of the stream was great. The angles of the camera work was great. Like I think this has been like my favorite angles to watch the game, because you can see more of the field and you can still tell players apart. Like, I thought it was great. I just hated that I couldn't know the score until it panned over to the right side of the field where the scoreboard in the stadium was there. That's all.
That was tough. And we've seen in other situations, it hasn't always been perfect, but like sometimes there literally just has been a camera like pointed at the scoreboard the entire time. And then that like visual gets plugged into the stream, which again, not ideal, but like mostly functional. Yeah, there are definitely times when I was skimming through the game at one point where I was like, I don't know what the score is, and I'd have to like skip like a few minutes ahead before like the movement of the play moved to the other side of the field, because I was doing some other stuff and was watching with the sound off. So no commentator help there. Yeah, we'll talk. We can continue to talk more about production stuff. I think PL production has been on whole better than previously, and all of the games so far have been live streamed. So good, room for improvement. But also every team is doing their own production locally, so that's a whole individual situation. So again, tough to judge too hard, but also I feel like a scoreboard is not that big of an ask. So anyway, good on Nashville, tough for Columbus. It'd be interesting to see how those two teams shape up when they get into the thick of their divisional action. Speaking of which, the game that I was on to cover in depth was Austin at Raleigh. This was a fun game. I enjoyed getting the chance to go back and watch through, because I was like, oh, close score at the end of the game. And then I looked at like the brief Twitter sort of like quarter summaries of it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Raleigh had a 5-point lead after 3 quarters and then only wins by 1 and scores only 2 points in the 4th quarter. It was, I pulled out the quarter score, Sasha, because I was curious. I was like, it feels like this game went back and forth. And at points, Austin was in control, and at points, Raleigh was in control. First quarter, Austin leads 5-3. Great. Good on the visitor, shorter roster, doing fine, picking up a couple breaks early. And then the second quarter is 6-2 in Raleigh's favor, and that gives them a 9-7 halftime lead. And then they followed up with a 6-3 third quarter in favor of Radiance, before Austin has a 6-2 fourth quarter, too little too late, just about in the end. But it did kind of feel like that. And the game was noticeably windy. There were an uncountable by me number of especially like higher throws, floaty throws that just got caught and taken by the wind, or just, do that annoying thing when the wind just drops the disc a little bit or lifts the disc a little bit to have it bounce off of your hands. Saw that a fair amount. And also just some unforced errors. There was a series at one point where there were it must have been like 3 or 4 Torch offensive points where they turned it over within the first 2 or 3 passes. And then on the second to last full point of the game. There was a whole thing about like the time, and there was technically a last point. But like for the points scored on the second to last full point, there were 3 turnovers and 0 completed passes to start. It was first throw turnover from Raleigh, first throw turnover from Austin, first throw turnover from Raleigh again, and Austin goes and scores a break. It was sort of like, I don't understand if it's folks getting tired or the wind or some combination thereof, but it was back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Plenty of good standout performers. Claire Bidigiri Curtis, 4 goals and an assist. Erica Birdsong had like a foot block at one point. 2 goals, an assist, and a couple of big blocks. Mary Rippey, 3 assists. Alex Barnett, 3 goals. Definitely could tell that it helped Radiance to have most of their UNC folks back. Don Colton came up big with a couple of trademark blocks. And then for Austin, Annie Ortiz, 2 goals, 3 assists. Summer Wilson, 3 goals. Jamie Estes, 2 goals and assist, and at least 1 block. Sierra Rimmer, 2 goals, 2 assists. So a little bit more balance from Austin. And they nearly got it back in the end, but it was just a lot of unforced errors. But I also am like, I feel like there was more wind down there than I was seeing. And at the end of the day, Raleigh moves to 2-0. Austin falls to 0-2. Your pick of Austin going to championship weekend is looking tougher by the week, Sasha. So yeah, it was great. High entertainment, and props to Raleigh to just pulling it out in the end.
Yeah, real quick, what is the word I'm looking for? Shout out to Summer Wilson for that insane layout grab at the very, very end of the game.
That was incredible.
That was incredible. Loved it.
Yeah, so that was the game I watched. And again, I think it is interesting that Radiant haven't necessarily won by that much. It has been pretty tight margins for Radiant so far. Their point diff is only +5. So tight margins, or tighter margins than you might expect, certainly again in the first game against Columbus. But again, they're sitting at the top of the South Division. So can't complain too much about that situation. Anything else to add on this game? Otherwise, have some other additional thoughts, but I'm happy to take a breath for a moment.
Please continue. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you. P-Will, can we get stats? Hey, Commissioner Amanda Dallas. Love to hear you on Deep Look. Would love to have you on Double Overtime. I know you're like making the rounds. You talked about, you're talking to Charlie and Keith. We'd love to have you on Double Overtime. Sasha and I would love to host. But can we please get stats? Like, I am a stats nerd. That's a thing. We talked about it earlier. And I get with like the Western Ultimate League, it's a little bit annoying given that we, Sasha, tend to record on Tuesday or Wednesday nights, that we have to wait for the past week's stats. But at least there are stats to go back to. And certainly as a commentator, and right now, like I can go back and look, and we were talking about some of the Western Ultimate League stat leaders as of week 5. I don't know. I couldn't tell you who was leading DC Shadow in goals or assists, even though they've put up how many? Like 53 points so far? And I can't tell you who is leading them in goals or assists right now, unless I go back myself at the moment and try and hand note every single goal or assist that happened in both of their games, which is very time consuming, folks. It would be very helpful. This is a request. Please. I would like stats to be available publicly, easily accessible, so that I don't have to do as much hand tracking all the time. And I don't have to guess at who might be leading maybe the best team in the league right now in goals and assists. Because I can take a guess, but unless I go back, I can't actually tell you, unless DC Shadow has it somewhere that maybe I need to go look. Maybe it's on their website. But if it's on their website, then it feels like it should be on the POL website. It just, please, please, it would be lovely. That is my request. And also Commissioner Dallas, would love to have you again on the show. We should talk about quad ball and ultimate and talk about mixed sports, because I heard you talk on Deep Look, which people should go listen to Deep Look. And if you're a subscriber, go listen to the subscriber bonus segment for Deep Look, dropped earlier today of Wednesday. Talking about, women in quad ball want to continue to play mixed sport. I would love to talk about how that whole feeling is as someone who's played mixed primarily. Would love to talk to you about that. So hit us up. Sasha, anything else? I assume you also would like stats.
I would love stats.
Great.
It makes our job so much easier.
So much easier. Like, you want us to be more if folks want us to be more specific in talking about your teams and their great players, because they're all great players on all these different teams, even when the teams lose. Tell the PUL, tell the league from your team that, like, hey, it'd be really great to have stats about our team so that people can talk about how great all of our players are. Because it's a struggle right now, folks. It's a struggle. Again, even if it's WO and it comes out later, happy for it anyway. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Hop off. Sasha, picks
time.
Picks review.
Picks review.
You've made up ground on me by one.
I did.
You did.
Chipping away.
I will still put a little asterisk on it, saying
nope, doesn't count.
Cal McGuire didn't play.
Doesn't count.
It's fine.
If you're gonna hold me to my Austin pick because we didn't know how the
or your Philly pick, or your non-Philly pick.
Yeah, then we're holding you to that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, fine. We picked mostly right across the board. We both were incorrect in picking LA at home. I guess we should have known better after they lost to San Francisco in week 1. We presumably won't make that mistake again in week 9 of the Western Ultimate League when they host San Diego. Otherwise, both correct across the board, favorites winning, and often by pretty big margins in the rest of the games. So
is LA the opposite of Arizona?
Could be. Can't win at home.
Can't win at home.
I mean, yeah. They've won 2 games so far this season, and they've been in San Diego and San Francisco. Hey, if they do well at Wild Wild Weekend, we're going to get to that. Maybe there's credence to it.
Maybe.
So
Anyways.
your hometown team, Utah Wild, are hosting Wild Wild Weekend in the Western Ultimate League. 4 games. It is the second interconference cross-conference matchups of the season after week 1, which saw Seattle, Oregon, San Diego, and Arizona all play each other. This time it will be San Francisco, Utah, LA, and Colorado. All 4 games played in Utah. First game of the weekend, San Francisco at Utah. My team versus your team. Sasha, what is your pick?
Picking my team. Obviously.
And I am obviously picking my team.
Picking my team.
I do my best not to be a homer when I do like commentary, even though I am sitting in the Falcons broadcast booth. But in this case, I will pick my team. LA versus Colorado in Utah. This one's interesting. LA sitting at 2-3, Colorado sitting with just the 1 win. Although, again, having played a pretty tough slate of games so far. Oh boy. I'm going to go Alpenglow. I'm going to say being used to the altitude will help Colorado take this one down.
I also am choosing Colorado.
All right, LA at Utah. Sasha, are you picking your hometown team again?
I am.
Oh boy, I want to be different. Do I really say that LA goes 0-2?
I do. But will you? I don't know.
No, I'll give them. But then Utah goes 0-2 in my picks. God. I'll pick Utah.
Okay. Sounded very begrudging.
Nah, because I don't like the idea of picking against LA twice. Although I also don't know their traveling roster. I also feel like I may have heard something that Maggie O'Connor may not be 100% after this past weekend. So TBD. SF versus Colorado in Utah. I think this is your pick first, Sasha.
My pick first. This is a tough one. I think this is the toughest one for me to choose.
I think it's actually my pick first, but that's fine. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead. Go for it.
I'm gonna go San Francisco.
San Francisco.
I'm gonna be a homer. I also think the Falcons do look good, and yes, they'll be playing at altitude, but like if Weeby plays, I think they might be good for it. Sasha?
I'm gonna go Colorado.
Okay. All right, a couple of different picks in that grouping.
I think that they showed their last game that they can do things, great things, cool things.
So, looking at our picks for Wild Wild Weekend, you have both Northwest teams going 2-0, and both. You have picked all Northwest across 4 games, and I have picked San Francisco twice because I'm a based homer, and not LA. Wow, LA getting shut out across 8 picks. Astro fans, tweet at us at OOT pod or email us doubleovertime@ultiworld.com. Maggie, feel free to text me. I believe in you, but your team's gonna maybe have a tough time at altitude. Moving on.
Real quick, from what I know, Maggie is not playing.
Well, rip Astro's chances. Yeah. That will make it more difficult. Definitely. Should we move to PUL things?
To the PUL. I feel
Minnesota,
like both of these are going to be pretty
trip.
easy picks.
Yeah. Oh, the Minnesota games?
Yeah.
Minnesota goes to the Southeast, plays at Atlanta, plays at Nashville. Can see in our document that you're already putting in the picks, and I think I agree with you. And that, assuming, again, we don't know the game day rosters, assuming that Robin and or Mex play. I think honestly, even if only one of them go, I still think that gives Minnesota the advantage even on the road.
Honestly, if neither of them go, I still think I just think the team is deep enough. I think that team is deep enough that they can handle Atlanta and Nashville pretty easily.
Yeah, well, it admittedly will be Minnesota's first game of the season against Atlanta. It will also be Atlanta's first game of the season. We will finally see all 12 teams in action once those two have played. And then the back-to-back with Nashville, which is not the closest cities together, but I mean, Minnesota's used to the Midwest, like 10 hours of driving to get to tournaments and things. So I'm sure
4 hours
won't phase them too much. Yeah. And then we have East Division matchup. These are going to be so like fun and difficult to pick all season. Philly at Portland. Surge going on the road, not getting the home field advantage that they had against New York.
This team's city name starts with a P.
Helpful. Thank you. Real insightful, Sasha.
And the name also has an A in it.
And an L.
And an L.
And a D. Sorry, folks. It's late. We're going to wrap stuff up soon. Don't worry.
I'm choosing Philly.
Okay.
They look really freaking good.
They looked really good. I think what I'm probably going to end up doing is, because this is the only home and away series that we get, I think it would be interesting and play so well into your little scenario there. to pick the home teams to win. I have done that quite a bit over the past few weeks. It's mostly worked out for me, so I'll pick Portland here. Plus, we got to have some differentiation. We already caught some differentiation with me picking San Francisco at Wild Wild Weekend, but we shall see. So that'll do it for our picks. Last thing is
highlight of the week,
and it's Callahan. There were 2 on the weekend that I know of. Oh wait, no, that was 2 weeks ago. I'm writing up the WOPL update, so I'm getting weeks mixed up. There was one in the New York Philly game. There's also one in the Arizona San Diego game. Anyway, it was Chip Chang with an incredible layout.
This one was cooler out than both of them, so sorry, not sorry.
Coming, and she did adjust her defensive positioning a little bit as that lefty backhand is.
Oh, Anna Callahan will just unfortunately releases too sharp. Ishii is leaning downfield and not able to recover, as there goes Chang off to get a Callahan.
Ended up clipping it and putting it on our Twitter, so you can find us at OOT Pod to see the video. And it was just like it was a misrelease throw, like plain and simple. It looked like a misrelease throw, but it was still an absolutely incredible play by Chip Chang to, first of all, recognize where the throw was going and started to run to that space before, I believe it was Ishii that was getting thrown to. But great heads up play by Chip, and just a great layout grab for the Callahan. It was awesome.
Yeah, definitely a bright spot for Arizona in an otherwise tough loss on the road. And I'm not so shocked that of the various players who could get a Callahan or would get a Callahan in that sort of situation, it would be Chip Chang, like longtime veteran of the sport, like fantastic field awareness, just able to read the play like that and come up with the goods on the Callahan grab. So the other Callahan I was referencing, Nina Finley for New York got Callahan against Philadelphia. So a couple Callahans won each league in back-to-back weeks. So that's our highlight of the week. Thank you for joining us on Double Overtime presented by VC Ultimate. Sasha, you and I are probably going to be watching some disc golf this weekend. The first major of the disc golf season is coming up, but also Wild Wild Weekend. Got to be rooting for your home team. See if that Northwest sweep that you called happens. Hope you'll watch alongside us, and also excited to see again all the PUL teams finally get into action, get our first look at this Minnesota Strike team this season. For Sasha Vogel, I'm Jenna Weiner. We'll catch you next time on Double Overtime. Bye.